Many NASCAR fans still to this day consider the 2014 season as one of the greatest of all time. But by no means was it perfect. It definitely had its flaws. One of those flaws that gets forgotten was their qualifying format. In 2014, they introduced group qualifying, which was very controversial at the time. Me personally, I actually liked the new format. Depending on what tracks you choose to do it on, as well as what type of aero package you have, makes it very entertaining to watch when done correctly. On 1.5 and 2 mile tracks, it's understandable to do this type of format. But when NASCAR decided to bring this format onto Superspeedways, it was destined to fail from the very beginning. The 2014 Daytona 500 session was unchanged, but the last 3 Superspeedway races were going to include group qualifying. This is a promo before the start of the first one at Talladega in the spring. I have never seen wrecks being shown in the promos before qualifying, so instead of having a legit fair format on these Superspeedways, it's clearly only for the sake of entertainment.
You know, I remember when coming to Talladega was pretty much the easiest day I had all year long for qualifying, and then it ramped up for the race. I think that's all changed now.
If I get knocked out of it, I'm going to be watching. I mean, this is going to be, even practice yesterday got crazy. People were, trying all sorts of games and everything. So I think there's a lot of strategy right now. Jimmy Finnick and I sat there at the back of the car and came up with about 3 different ideas just in the last few minutes. So nobody really knows what's going to happen here.
It sounds like a lot of the teams have plans to go out together, and that's all fine and well till we leave pit road and we're out in the spots we want to be. So it's going to be interesting to say the least.
Reactions to group qualifying from drivers was mixed at first. You heard Carl Edwards speaking positively about it, but then you had drivers like Brad Keselowski who voiced their concerns from the get-go. For those who don't understand, the most fair and proper way to do qualifying on a superspeedway is through single car runs. Yes, it can get very boring watching one car make 2 laps around a track by itself, but that isn't the point of qualifying. Especially on superspeedways, you can get away with group qualifying on 1.5 and 2 mile tracks, but when you put 40 plus cars on a superspeedway to qualify at the same time, you are bound to find some type of trouble. Teams spend hours upon hours getting their cars ready in the wind tunnel for super speedway racing. Single car qualifying on them was really meant to showcase all of the work and dedication these teams have been putting in. Having these cars qualify in a group takes away from that. Now anybody can win the pole in this format just by drafting in the right pack. Now instead of who has the fastest car, it's all about timing. From when you're gonna go out to what type of pack you're in to who's gonna work with you. This format was destined to start causing some problems, and in the first one at Talladega, it did. Michael Waltrip and Kyle Busch both immediately ran into issues, receiving minor damage qualifying in these packs. Then there's the actual qualifying results. Take a look at this bottom 25 and you'll see some pretty notable names. The most notable being Dale Earnhardt Jr., of course, who qualified outside the top 30. You think it's because he had a slow car? Absolutely not. He had no clue what the hell to do. The format wasn't intended to benefit big teams. The teams that were going to benefit the most were the underfunded and part-time ones. Which is why the driver and team that ended up getting the pole in this session didn't surprise me one bit.
Right here.
Hey. Oh, yeah, baby.
Brian freaking Scott, for the part-time RCR entry, ended up winning the pole. Then you go down to row 2 and you see AJ Allmendinger and Casey Mears starting 3rd and 4th. If I'm a small team or a part-time one, I am extremely grateful for this format. But this was only the beginning. That would be the most tame session of the 3. When they went to Daytona in July, the Cup Series had a very interesting session, but before they went out, the Nationwide Series had some chaos of their own.
These are guys that are trying to make the race. Oh, we got trouble.
I think it's raining. It's raining over there.
Yes,
It is raining on the back straightaway.
Over the racetrack.
Caution, what happened here?
Mike Bliss, one of those that broke free. You see the 97 of Joe Nemechek and heavy damage.
That's Benny Gordon, the 91
Yep,
car.
to Benny Gordon at 91 machine.
You can't really blame the format for it raining all of a sudden, but would we have as many cars involved if it were single car qualifying? Obviously not. By the time Cup qualifying begins, it's very apparent that weather is going to be a factor. It's already chaotic qualifying like this, but when you throw weather into the mix, it puts more pressure on these teams to try and get the best run possible. The first round would turn out to be the only round they would run in this session. Take a look at the leaderboard. David Gilliland, Reed Sorensen, Landon Castle, and Bobby friggin' Labonte make up the top 4? If I'm one of the big teams, I have to feel some type of way knowing that I have way more money and resources only to end up getting beat by the underfunded teams. While that's one issue, another major one that could have been seen a mile away was politicking. And what I mean by that is you were going to have Chevys, Fords, and Toyotas working together. And when you don't have enough to work with, drivers are going to get team orders telling them not to work with certain people.
Just over 7 minutes remaining in round 1 of knockout qualifying. Let's head down to pit road, get a report from Chris Neville.
Well, Adam, both Jamie McMurray, Kyle Larson, very quick yesterday. Jamie McMurray was the quickest in yesterday's practice, and that group was going to try and hang out with the Hendrick drivers in that first run, but everything seemed to get broken up because of congestion. And those two, they've been trying to make other runs out there, I think 3 attempts now, but every time they try and hook up and make a run, they run into slower traffic out there. So as we're down to about 6 minutes, 45 seconds left, those two, very quick yesterday, still haven't really posted a lap today.
And Chris, I would say the Hendrick drivers are done. Jimmy Johnson right now is 5th. Dale Earnhardt Jr. is 7th. Gordon in the top 10. Casey Kane is 14th. He's got to be feeling pretty safe at this stage.
If this group, if they don't pick up some speed, they're going to roll off the banking. They've just about stopped over there.
See, Josh Wise has slid in with them. Denny Hamlin is there, and 2-time Sprint Cup champion Terry Labonte also joining this group.
Yeah, they're just, you got one group riding up on the banking of those 6 drivers, and then look at the bottom. And it's like, okay, who's going to make the move here and go where we can maybe get lined up and try to run you guys down?
Wow. Well, there are some big-name drivers.
Larson is holding them back. He's going to make sure that that group on the inside, they're not going to go back out on the racetrack.
Yep. Yeah. And Terry Labonte has abandoned ship. He will come down pit road. All those Fords will, and now the Chevrolets join them, including that group from Ganassi Racing, and Denny Hamlin also going to come back down the pit lane, and this has got to be frustrating.
Behind you, that's the 3 car.
Well, guys, a lot of frustrated drivers. You can hear them on the radio. The busiest guys are actually the spotters. Denny Hamlin communicating with his spotters saying, let's get these guys together. We can all get in if we can get a group that's willing to run together. But there's more politicking to keep guys outside of the top 24 than trying to get into the top 24, it seems like.
That has to be the dumbest thing I have ever seen take place in Cup Series qualifying. You can't really blame the teams for this. They're obviously not going to work with certain ones. You have to blame the sanctioning body for putting them in this position. Notable drivers like Brad Keselowski, Joey Logano, Kyle Larson, Jamie McMurray, Denny Hamlin, and both Kurt and Kyle Busch were on the outside looking in. Qualifying ended early due to rain, and the top 4 I had mentioned earlier all kept their spots.
Have you ever been through anything more frustrating than that?
I know, that's pretty dumb.
The last session that took place at Talladega in the fall was really the icing on a messed up cake. NASCAR had made rules changes to its qualifying sessions on Superspeedways a month prior. Nope, they didn't get rid of the format. Instead, they opted to shorten the length of each session and divide the first of 3 rounds into 2 segments. This was put in place to better disperse the drivers and limit large packs from forming. Separating the first round of drivers into 2 groups is one thing, but now you only have 5 minutes to get a lap in. I mentioned earlier that timing was a large factor now into starting up front in these sessions, but now limiting the time made it more important than ever. Just take a look at the bottom 16. That says it all right there. Dale Earnhardt Jr., Austin Dillon, Jamie McMurray, Tony Stewart, Denny Hamlin, Kevin Harvick, Joey Logano, Kyle Busch, Kyle Larson, and Jeff Gordon starting in dead last. All because they weren't in the right pack or didn't cross the line in time.
Timing is everything, not just in the lap time you make, but how you gap yourself and when you go. And the pack ran so much slower than I anticipated that whole time that, you know, we were just caught, you know, too far behind.
It's just a real mess, to be honest with you. I think we're all just, you know, we're kind of confused in what we got to do. And it was hard because, you know, you think you have enough time, and then when people start checking up, you start checking up, and then all of a sudden you lose 3 seconds, and that 3 seconds was enough to not allow us to get back across the line to make a lap. So,
and those are important because all of those cars who were way down the owner's point standings or who had none, making the top 36 on time, bumped so many big names like Stewart, Hamlin, Larson, Harvick, Logano, Kyle Busch, and Jeff Gordon out of the top 36, that these are the 3 drivers who failed to qualify.
At this point, Roush Racing was definitely on the downswing, but to have Ricky Stenhouse Jr. miss the race entirely, all because he didn't cross the line in time and had a bunch of drivers that were good on an owner's point starting way in the back, was absolutely unacceptable. Afterwards, drivers voiced their frustrations more than ever before on how bad they thought this format was. In the end, Brian Vickers walked away with the pole, AJ Allmendinger and at the time part-time driver Ryan Blaney started in row 2, Michael McDowell in row 3, Travis Quaffle in row 4, followed by Terry Labonte and Michael Annett rounding out the top 10. After the season was over, do you think NASCAR learned their lesson and decided to get rid of this format? Nope, instead they decided to double down, adding it to Speed Weeks qualifying, where we saw the worst Daytona 500 qualifying session in NASCAR history, followed by one of the worst Xfinity Series qualifying sessions ever. After all of the chaos that took place during 2015 Speed Weeks, NASCAR eventually came to their senses and brought back single car qualifying on Superspeedways. Eventually they brought back single car qualifying for all 3 series, making group qualifying a thing of the past. I still contend to this day that when done correctly, group qualifying was not only entertaining, but still rewarded the fast drivers and teams on 1.5 to 2 mile tracks. But when done on Superspeedways, more often than not, you would get some of the wackiest lineups as well as a ton of chaos. The 2014 season is one of the greatest in NASCAR history, but it certainly wasn't perfect. And proof of that can be found in what is now known as the Superspeedway group qualifying fiasco of 2014. And once again, that'll do it for another video. Thank you guys so much for watching. This is Black Flags Matter. Catch you next time.